sins and bad deeds. We testify that whomsoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides, no one can lead astray. And whomsoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lets go astray, no one can guide. I bear witness that Allah, there is no one worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He is one and has no partners. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His faithful servant and messenger. Amma ba'd, let us continue. So, Brother Jason just testified the Shahada. And one thing that we should always take a moment to respect when anyone takes a Shahada is how Brother Jason is more in line with the spirit of our beloved companions than most of us are. We're born in a Muslim family. And that's where, when we talk about companions, there's one thing that binds all of them. Although they didn't all agree on everything, and they debated many things, and they came from different backgrounds, the one thing that unites all of them is that they grew up living a certain life with certain ideas, with certain influences, with certain teachers, with a certain culture. And when Muhammad preached the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the message of Islam, every one of them had to essentially push one part of their life to the side to adopt another. That involved a lot of turmoil in the personal life. We know about the breakings of relations, ultimately leading to battles, but that is one thing. The key thing is that I grow up thinking one way and believing something. And then with that, I see a truth. And I take all the risks and the challenges and the hardships, and I go in this direction. That is the truth, in spite of all of those challenges. And when someone like Brother Jason adopts Islam, adopts a new way of life, which is a great blessing for him, he is like those companions. He is not like me, who grew up in a Muslim house from very early time, never having to make a sharp change. And in that I respect, brother, what you've done, and that you somehow, with your thought and your independence and your reason, you saw a truth that many of us take for granted. And you took a decision to put your life in a completely different trajectory. And I think all of us will acknowledge that it will be a great blessing to you, and it is a great blessing to us to witness your Shahada. So today is Juneteenth, and briefly what Juneteenth is that when the Emancipation Proclamation happened in this country, which was the proclamation freeing black people of slavery, it still took a couple of years for the South to fully surrender. And a couple of years after, about 2.5 years after that Emancipation Proclamation, General Lee from the Confederate Army at Appomattox took the surrender. And about 2 weeks after that, about 2.5 weeks after that, the Union Army marched into Texas, and the general made a proclamation that from this day forward in this country or in this area, the relationship between slave owners and slaves is now the relationship between employer and employee. So that's happened on June 16th, this proclamation, and that's the day that was celebrated, was celebrated a lot before, then faded away, and is now being celebrated today. Now, there's something I want to point out about slavery in America, because if you read Islamic texts and even other history books, you'll always find that slavery is a very common aspect of many cultures. Africa, they had slaves. In Arabia, they had slaves. In this country, they had slaves. In England, they have slaves. But there's something that you should know, that there, if I want to divide it into two very general categories, there's two big different types of slaves. And the type of slavery that was in Arabia is very, very different than the kind of slavery that is here. So I don't want Muslims to confuse the two, because I want them to appreciate how significantly worse the slavery in this country was. Because in this country, slavery was not only racial, which didn't exist, for example, in Africa, where different people enslaved people, or in Arabia, where an Arab enslaved another Arab. It was here based primarily on race. And to justify the horrible things that we think about, to understand it, a big part of that was the dehumanization of black people, that they're like animals. That's why you can see celebrations where they are lynching or hanging an African American, and people are dressed up and partying like it's going to a rodeo. How do you justify that? Because then there are people that maybe not so evil, but this dominant idea that these are not humans, that justified their immoral actions, is what allowed them to do what they did for so long. And it's why that when the Emancipation Proclamation happened, that it didn't solve the biggest problem. Because black people treated as cattle, animals, inhuman for so long. You don't just emancipate somebody and they go back to being full humans. They start to believe those things, that they are lesser, less capable, less human. They don't become emancipated and say, let me vote today. They're just hoping that they get paid maybe 1 penny on the dollar. So there's a psychological trauma that happened that this country has not moved beyond. And a big part of it is that the majority Caucasian community has for a long time after that did not even acknowledge that this was a problem, because they said, you know, well, we freed them. And look at them. We let them do it. Look at them. And they ignore all the injustice. They ignore all the unfairness. Okay, you put that aside. But even if everything was just and fair on the face of it, you have taken an entire race of people in this country and you have psychologically diminished them. You diminish their ability to do anything. If you diminish someone's dignity, you understand that how far dignity can take you in life. You can take somebody who will push forward because he is dignified. But if you strip the dignity, then that person won't have drive. And that lack of drive may lead to poverty, which will lead to lack of education, which will lead to a breakdown of the home. And maybe the majority community wants to push all that as it's not my problem because we emancipated them, but that is a severe injustice. And I want everybody to understand that the slavery that you see throughout the world and the slavery here is different. Now, this type of slavery also exists in other parts of the world. It's not unique. So I don't want anybody to think that what they did here is completely outlandish compared to what they've done in other places. The idea of dehumanizing people, for example, the Germans dehumanized the Jews to justify the experimentation on the Jews as living people like the animals. In Africa, the Hutu and Tutsis, which are racially identical people, dehumanized one to the other to take children and chop off their hands as just a little slap on the wrist. Just chop that. So it's not unique. So there are the two things. What they did here is a certain type of oppression that is severe but not unique. And it's certainly different than the kind of slavery that was in Arabia during the time of the Prophet. Unfortunately, the Muslims, through the influence of Europe, eventually participated in that kind of dehumanization when they participated, especially in North Africa in the slave trade. But that is not Islam. That is Muslims of the later generation. Islam has always preserved the dignity of everybody, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender. But you can't blame Islam for the shortcomings of the Muslims. Take a break here to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala